May Jesus be praised and onward with Mary. A good and holy day to you all, my dear children, in the sacred hearts of Jesus and Mary, and in the most chaste heart of Saint Joseph. Well, hello again with our morning column, Saints and Coffee. Today is Wednesday, the 13th of November. The Church marks Saint Diego's feast day in its traditional calendar. A friar with thaumaturgical gifts of a certain, often for hours, he had also come to Rome, staying at the 𝐥'𝐸 convent, and then performed several miracles in his life, a man of prayer and penance like many in the Franciscan world. But today, 13th November, we also remember the arrival of the painting of Our Lady of Pompeii in Pompeii. It's the 149th anniversary. It was the 13th of November. From 1875, we'll also talk about it because, as you can see, it's the invincible backdrop, I'd almost say, of Don Minutella, as it has been for some time now on his travels. The painting, the image, very dear to me. I hope it will become so for all of you of Our Lady of Pompeii. Really pray to her. Do novenas if you need favors. I've talked about this to you before. When you need favors, say the novena to Our Lady of Pompeii. If you don't get it, keep saying it. Keep doing the novena until you get something, if not the grace itself, then something that hints at it. Hear the grace, because not everything can be obtained. Many times God has other plans for us. You ask for grace, let's say to be healed from an illness, and you don't receive the grace of being healed from the illness, but then you receive many other graces. In a moment, we'll quickly return to discussing this anniversary. 149th anniversary of the arrival of the painting of Our Lady of Pompeii in Pompeii itself. The painting arrived from Naples, and as you may remember, I always willingly talk about it. The painting that Blessed Bartolo Longo had chosen was transferred, incredibly, it was transferred on a dung cart. Here, these are God's drawings, a bit like even in Lourdes, the Pig's Grotto was called. Massabile Grotto, where the Madonna appeared. So today, Wednesday the 13th of November, this evening, there's Brother Celestino's catechesis, the biblical catechesis on next Sunday's Gospel. There's the post. Share it, share it, share it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. And always like every broadcast. But today, this afternoon, we're tripling it. The experience of the Holy Rosary. What I'm about to say is very important. I say this solemnly to all my ecclesiastical detractors, from Father Serafino Tognetti to all the others. I'd like to ask the production team to post, as we've been doing, the Rosary prayer post again today at 6:30. It's a handy time. With Mass at 8 a.m., moving the Rosary just before dinner's easier. From Rome northward, dinner's earlier. But in the south, from Naples down, they don't dine before 8. Anyway, 6:30 is a convenient time. Right then, share it, share it, share it, spread the word. Everyone else get down on their knees and pray. Because what's happening with Father Ferre, in my opinion, and I'm not stupid, is looking more and more like a fix. In my opinion, at this point, someone's pulling the strings. There's a director orchestrating all this. Because I'm told that in response to my theological reflections, Father Ferre responds with notes, and then it's me who attacks. Then there are the resentful remnants, because Don Minutella is disrespectful. Go and listen to how Father Ferre behaves and expresses himself, and then you'll understand if you pay attention. Especially, but neither Dr. Cianci nor Father Ferre will succeed in making us look like a cabal of fanatics who believe only in prophecies. Show some respect, Father Ferre and Dr. Cianci of Don Minutella, because on your channels you host, unlike me on mine, insults and offenses, not only to me, but also to my parents and my family. Regarding my past, my person, you should be ashamed, especially you, brother. Where is the priestly charity? If I say Lombards, I mean it ironically and directly, and above all, I repeat, he didn't want to be available for public discussion. Why? Why does Father Fare raise these issues on social media, but refuses to engage in a discussion? Doesn't anyone wonder about that? Doesn't anyone ask? You won't get away with passing off that paltry sum as some kind of Brancaleone army. 𝐷𝐚𝐼𝐻 twice the theologian, remember that. He's 𝐷𝐚𝐼𝐻 and twice a theologian, once more than Father Fare. My path isn't just prophetic, it's also canonical, legal, and above all, dogmatic and theological. You should be ashamed of these dishonest dealings, which in my opinion, you're carrying out with some underhand maneuvering. People are slowly opening their eyes after the initial shock, thank God. And as I said yesterday, I did a live stream last night. So as you know, it's Bellico Tuesday, where I really targeted Father Fare, and I invite you to listen to it if you haven't already. There it is, the great debate between Rome and Fatima, and incidentally Tychonius and the Decessio. It was all an hour, an intense hour of theological reflection on the subject of falsehoods. Said on the other hand, things like prophecies are useless, that you should only follow the canonical path, and all that sort of thing. I'd urge Father Fare, as I did last night, to not misquote me. Stop being so clever and pretending I said, for example, that the Catholic Church is no longer the Catholic Church. I've never officially given any such direction. Maybe it'll slip out in conversation. But from a theological point of view, I've never officially said that the Catholic Church is no longer the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church will always remain the Catholic Church, to give just one example, until the end of time. Yet Father Fare, with great freedom of conscience, knows he's lying when he claims I say the Catholic Church is no longer the Catholic Church. But last night, we had this interesting reflection that I invite you to follow. The numbers alone speak volumes on this. Even on this, Father Fare says that we are over here, that we're witnessing a mass exodus. But prove it. Prove it. But how do they do it? Honestly, look, I assure you, when I was little and said yes to the Lord, I never imagined that there would be all this in the church. Envy, jealousy, dishonesty, lies. Where'd all these people go? Want proof? Shall we show last night's rosary post? The screenshot, there it is. I don't know if you see that little red circle, the red circle. I don't know if you realize there are 1,337 faithful praying the rosary with 𝐷𝐚𝐼𝐻. So I'd like to say to Father Fare, if he doesn't correct himself, he's a dishonest person, a dishonest priest, when he says there's a mass exodus. Because until proven otherwise, contra factum non valet argumentum. Try doing these numbers yourselves. Isn't there perhaps a bit of envy on your part? Isn't it eating away at you, seeing that even this maneuver you're trying isn't working? It's not working. Not because people are fanatical about 𝐷𝐚𝐼𝐻, but because the Madonna created the small remainder. Because this small remainder is indestructible. It's indestructible because it answers God's design. 1,337 faithful. It's not a catechism, it's not a reflection, a prayer of liberation. Oil that's given away. Dishonest nonsense announced against 𝐷𝐚𝐼𝐻. It's not a show, it's not a waltz. It's simply the recitation of the Holy Rosary led by this 𝐷𝐚𝐼𝐻 who's annoying the whole world. 1,337 faithful. I don't know. Tonight we'll pray again when time allows. Once more people heal with the Rosary. I say this on Our Lady of Pompeii's feast, marking her painting's arrival. Through the Rosary, dear ones, healing comes. Charismatic versions of prayers for healing, liberation, and consolation. They're lovely, do good, don't mistake me. However, if we were to return as Our Lady so desires, it's because she chose her dear apostle 𝐷𝐚𝐼𝐻, who is especially deserving of this credit, so that we might understand again the indispensable importance of the Holy Rosary, which concerns everyone from the Pope. If understood to cardinals, bishops, priests, monsignors, theologians, friars, nuns, laity, families, youth, children, elderly men, women, The power of the Holy Rosary, my dear children. I wrote this post, which the director is so commendably presenting. You can find it on Radio Domina's Facebook profile. We would all be healed. So last night we were 1,337. We'll pray the Rosary today and see how long we can continue. I want to tell you that this isn't something that can be ignored. And here I make an appeal that I'm sure will reach Father Serafino Tognetti. Last summer, in July, Father Tognetti wrote a couple of letters to some faithful members of the small remnant who served in Don Divo Barsati's Sons of God, in which letters Father Tognetti concluded that Don Minutella is possessed by the devil. So, it's a strong statement from one priest against another, one brother against another. Written, it's not verbally said that sometimes it's something. As you know, words fly, but writing stays. Words fly, writing stays. Why? Because when you speak, you often let yourself go unintentionally. When writing, it's different. Written words endure. So I'd invite Father Serafino Tognetti to save his soul. Why? If it were true that I'm possessed by the devil as he implies, no, as he writes, not implies. You see, they're all coming at me, my dear children. They're all coming at me. It's an unbelievable story, this Don Minutella business. So, if what he writes and claims and has claimed were true, that I am possessed by the devil, it's his duty to intervene. To intervene as I asked him, help me, Father Tognetti, help me, help me. How can you help me? Contact me, pray for me, say a prayer of liberation, of healing and exorcism, do something to help me, all right? But if I were possessed by the devil, one would have to explain how it's possible that I get almost 1,400 people to pray. Even the big networks like Padre Pio TV, where the daily rosary is prayed by 2, 3, 4, or at most 500 to 600 people, don't achieve this. I'd like to understand how it's possible that a demoniac, a possessed priest, has almost 1,340 people praying in Italy. The afternoon Holy Rosary. It's difficult to reconcile this, isn't it, Father Tognetti? You're dishonest with me. You lack honesty and risk the salvation of your soul. I'm telling you, I won't be able to say, sir, I didn't tell him. You won't be able to say, we weren't told. Because if I am possessed, well, okay. But if I'm not possessed, dear Father Tognetti, you've made a very serious slander. An unforgivable offense should publicly apologize and write further letters to these people, apologizing and saying, I regret having offended and slandered a brother who in Italy is the only one able to lead 1,400 people in the rosary prayers. He should do it because if he doesn't, even if he plays the saint all over Italy, he too, because they all get caught up with this kind of cut. Thankfully, Don Minutella is, let's say, hyper-masculine. You know what I mean by hyper-masculine? That he doesn't give a damn about manners, because he's sincere, he's authentic, parrhesia, frankness. They're all like they've come out of church niches. May the Lord bless them for goodness sake. But I would never say a priest is possessed. If necessary, I'll fight him, just as I'm doing with Father Ferre, the latest in a long line. On the issues, I invite him to a public debate. I invite you, you lot, you cowards who don't show up, my blessed brothers. I feel sorry for you. That one says I'm possessed. I invite him to a debate. Let's meet. Let's see if it's true. Nothing. That other one comes out, does the outing mistake. Now he's making fun of me. He's teasing me in the Lombard way as he knows how to do. And I ask him for a public confrontation. Nothing. Got it? Nothing at all. These offend. They squander my honor. And then the people who hate Don Minutella because they feel reproached in their conscience. Because Don Minutella has this good thing about him, that he reproaches the conscience. I've been told several times from various sources to write an apologetic book. Enough with these apologies. Those who care for me, be patient. I'm not venting when I say these things. I'm taking stock, telling you what this mission costs. So I was saying, I intervene on the issues, on the topics. I did so until last night. And regarding the Pope Vere Mortis Est, since they say that the declaration of the impeded see is needed first, I'm telling you they're wrong about that too. Look, I'm completely at a loss. Their project, keeping this broken boat afloat as long as we can, forever. Instead, the situation is as we have highlighted, which doesn't mean despising canon law. I haven't disparaged canon law, unlike Father Fare, who openly disparaged the prophecies. And that's why I threw those statements in his face last night. If you didn't see it, you can watch last night's incredibly important catechesis, Father Dominatella's invective on the content. There it is, the post. You'll find it on the Radio Domina Nostra podcast, last night's catechesis. I threw Benedict XVI's words in his face. Revelation is one, however, the Lord is free to speak to his church as he wishes, citing Lourdes and Fatima. So how do we reconcile this? But he can't manage it, because you see, they despise prophecies. Father Fare despises prophecies. And Dr. 𝐥'𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐸 even worse, because Dr. 𝐥'𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐸 is even worse at it, because there are people who tell me that when he was invited to the rosary, but you pray, he seems to have replied. I don't know if that's true, but I have many clues it might be true. Dr. 𝐥'𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐸 suddenly, let's drop that. But they say I only follow the prophecy. That's not true. The proof is that they only follow canon law. But the church doesn't live by canon law alone. Father Fare theology graduates should know this. And they're trying in every way, as I read in the comments, that my detractors, pleased, they write to their church liberators that Dr. 𝐥'𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐸, well, look at these pathetic people, poor devil, what a shame. It makes me, I don't know, these 𝐥'𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐸 worshipping people, hail Dr. 𝐥'𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐸, who will save the church, a journalist who doesn't say if he prays, if he believes, etc., etc., will save the church, because it's a political fact. What accepted people there are around, my dear. What accepted people there are around. So the prophetic element isn't the only one, and I haven't despised canon law. How Father Fare despises the prophetic element. I follow canon law. Read my books. Peter, where are you? Church, where to? There, the canonical element is particularly in-depth. There, the canonical element is particularly highlighted. So it's not true that I only want to follow the prophetic element. They're doing this on purpose, with this propaganda maneuver behind which someone is pulling the strings, to try and get Don Minutella and the little remainder through, with a gang of lunatics who follow a guru, a holy man who invents prophecies, wants to be a great prelate, and they're all a bunch of mental wrecks. This project isn't going to work. You dishonest lot. You haven't got the guts. Who's behind you? Who armed you? Who's secretly playing Father Fare's cards? Who's pulling all the strings here? You won't succeed with this project. Father Minutella is loved by the people who have remained Catholic. They won't abandon him. They'll let what must happen happen, but they'll carry on. The small remainder will continue. And it doesn't just live on prophecies, it lives on canon law, theology, and so on. So, the idea, as they write on 𝐥'𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐸's blog, that Mr. Minutella, who had mental health problems and needed treatment, they write these things. I don't have mental health problems, otherwise Bergoglio wouldn't have excommunicated me or reduced me to the local level, since the Code of Canon Law provides that those with mental disorders shouldn't be sanctioned. So I thank Jorge and Mario Bergoglio, who defended me fiercely to the death in this matter, because they must have carried out an investigation and realized I'm not mentally ill. So to all those who have let me down, who humiliate me in this way, especially when you involve my family, God will hold you to account, because now my parents are dead. God will hold you to account. You're hyenas, worse than hyenas, and Dr. 𝐥'𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐸, pleased with himself, doesn't remove these things, but someone points out to him, "Excuse me, Dr. 𝐥'𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐸, but where should the canonical path lead? What should these cardinals be? We can't answer these questions. We have to wait. Keep the show on the road until 2036. Then who knows? We'll have about 10 anti-popes until the story ends like this, and everyone cashes in. All right? So, to conclude this broad introductory reflection, tonight we pray the Holy Rosary again. But I'm telling Father 𝐸𝐻𝐸 that it's hard to believe that Don Minutella is possessed if he gets 1,337 people to pray. People, the Holy Rosary. I find that quite difficult. Anyway, that's the issue. And as I'd like to tell Father Farai, as I've tried, I don't dismiss canon law as you're implying to make me seem like a wreck who doesn't know what he wants, unlike you. We have proof you despise prophecies, so you're wrong, not me. Because even if I favor prophecies, I don't disregard canon law. But you, Father Ferret, what do? He resorts to canon law, disregards the prophecies, and sets them aside, deeming them. I replied to them last night with Benedict XVI, who said precisely that God is free to speak whenever he wants. In Marian apparitions, the Lord is free. It seems to me that the Pope responded as Father Farai deserved. And then, dear children, we're preparing for the Naples meetings, quickly. Next Saturday, let's hope the Neapolitans turn up. I have to say that so far, Naples, I'm sorry to say it, but facts speak louder than words. I don't know what it depends on, but the Neapolitans aren't responding well. I'm sorry to say it, but it's a fact. Every time I have to go to Naples, I feel a bit down because it's a huge city. Few come. Without outsiders, you could count Neapolitans on one hand. I don't understand what this depends on. I'll think about it. Anyway, yes, let's hope this is the time that a couple of Neapolitans answer next Saturday, the 16th of November, in Naples. Nothing's guaranteed. Look, we go to a lot of trouble to get around. You need to know that. And it's a significant financial investment, too. In this regard, please help us. You know our IBAN and postal account are always available. At 4:30, at the Ramada by Wyndham Hotel on 40 Ferrari Street, we'll be in Naples for the recitation of the Rosary, the Holy Mass, Eucharistic Adoration, this moment of faith. And on Sunday, we're in Bari. Always 4:30. With the same program, it'll be Celestino, Father Enrico, and myself. These are the upcoming appointments. I should say that, probably, since from there I'll be heading towards France, because the following Sunday, the 24th, at 3 o'clock, there's a meeting with the small remaining French-speaking group in Charleville-Mézières in France. And yesterday Sylvia from Belgium called to tell me what they're writing, coincidentally. The Farinians, the Siontians, in French, against Don Minutella. Dishonest as they are, they say I spread hate, that I'm conducting a hate campaign against them, which is a lie. But they're the resentful ones. They want apologies, you understand? Careful now, open your eyes, see. They want apologies, sincere ones. Then, meanwhile, you see, they're arming themselves. We'll be in Charleville-Mézières, Sunday 24th, and Wednesday, December 4th, at 5:30. 5:30. In Zurich, Switzerland, with Professor Brunoni, there will first be the Rosary and Mass, followed by a round table, a conference entitled, What Church After Benedict XVI? All these meetings are free, and there's no need to register. And I also wanted to announce that we might possibly meet in Emilia-Romagna the Tuesday after next, for a moment of faith, and to see some news. So I'm also able to announce that, since I'm saying it now, the 27th of November is the Feast of Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal. Wednesday, I think it should be the 27th of November. It's the Feast of Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal. It's an important feast and we'll be there in Genoa. I haven't even told the Liguria regional representatives yet. Anyway, we're in Genoa on November 27th. But our key date, as you know, is Sunday, December 8th in Milan for the Immaculate Conception Feast and Floral Tribute. I said yesterday that we'd all be there, the whole association, but Father Ioannis pointed out that he can't make it because he's already committed to something else. He won't be able to come because he's already made a pastoral commitment in Germany. So unfortunately, he can't be there for the meeting. Father Ioannis, whom we thank for his recent visit to Sardinia. A coach leaves Rome at 5:30. A coach leaves Tiburtina station for Milan, then returns to Rome with passengers. Right then, my dears, today's topic is rather interesting. Ratzinger Messori, a report on faith, 1984. But before we get to that, I wanted to remind you, as I mentioned at the beginning, that today is the anniversary of the arrival of the painting of Our Lady of Pompeii in Pompeii itself. It's the anniversary of a painting that was missing, because Blessed Bartolomeo had begun to consider, just imagine this chapel. The great things of God always begin and arise in the manner of Bethlehem. Let's never forget that Bethlehem and Nazareth precede Jerusalem. Let's always remember that. I'm always struck, how devoted I am, from the very beginnings, for example, of Don Bosco. Anyone who goes to Turin and visits, as I did years ago, the house in Valdocco will notice a kind of register with the signatures of Don Bosco and the first two. It's incredible, only 2 or 3, no more. And one imagines that from that initial cell arose one of the most important and glorious religious congregations, except to see how they too have been reduced in our own day. But what the Salesians wrote is there for all to see, and yet it all began like this. It's the Bethlehem style, the Nazareth style, the style of God, the style of God, more a work. It's big in the church, and it must do good, the more humble and almost hidden the beginnings are. And so it is with the story of Pompeii. On the 13th of November, 1875, the eve of the mission's closure, the Pompeii mission, Blessed Bartolo set off for Naples, searching for a canvas, but without finding one to his liking, or suitable for his budget. But Providence, which with an invisible hand guided the threads, these are the very words of the Blessed Bartolomeo, describing an event that would have been nothing short of extraordinary, allowed him to meet his spiritual father. We've discussed this often, Dominican Father Alberto Redente. They say that chance is the way God uses when he wants to remain anonymous. And guess what? Father Alberto, this Dominican priest, years ago, had donated an old rosary painting to a nun at the Rosario Porta Medina Conservatory, Sister Maria Conchetta dell'Itala. Bartolo, since he hadn't found one, and since he didn't have enough money to buy a prestigious one, without being asked twice, hurried to reach the nun so that the painting could arrive in time in the valley, where the missionaries and the devout people were waiting for it. Bartolo Longo had promised them he'd return in time with a painting to venerate because they didn't have one. But when Sister Maria Conchetta first showed him the painting, Blessed Bartolo felt a pang in his heart and would write, "It was not just an old and worn canvas, but the face of Our Lady, better than a benign virgin, all holiness and grace. It seemed more like a rough and coarse big woman." Besides the deformity, it's always Bartolo who writes. An unpleasantness of the face, a handspan of canvas was also missing from the Virgin's head. The whole cloak was cracked, eroded by time and riddled with moth holes, and pieces of color were detached here and there through the cracks. Nothing to say on the other's ugliness. Saint Dominic on the right looked more like a street idiot than a saint, and on the left, well, I don't know if you can see, on the left was a Saint Rose with a coarse, rough, and vulgar face like a peasant woman crowned with roses. In short, the painting was really ugly and worthless. Blessed Bartholomew, at one point, even considered giving up on taking it with him, but partly because of the promise he'd made to the farmers to return with a picture, and partly because of his wife's insistence, she was perhaps eager to be rid of it, he finally agreed. He was convinced, however, that the Pompeians would hardly be inclined to pray before such an ugly painting. To this problem another was added, and this one wasn't insignificant, namely, how to get the painting to Pompeii. Because even on this, Blessed Bartolomeo didn't have much financial means. Its dimensions were excessive for the railways, and even for a carriage. And here another episode occurs, equally symbolic of God's actions. Bartolo remembers that one of the leaders of all the valley colonists, a certain Angelo Tortora, used to go to Naples with his cart. At that time, he was probably about to return to Pompeii. He called him and gave him the large painting. What Bartolo couldn't know, however, was that Angelo often went to Naples to collect manure from the gentlemen's stables and then resell it to the farmers who used it to fertilize the valley's fields. And so, Blessed Bartolomeo will write, "While the image was on its way along the provincial road towards Pompeii on Angelo Tortora's cart, I was racing to the railway station to get there first." But what a disappointment we felt when, arriving in Valle di Pompeii that evening, what a story, eh? We learned that Tortora had transported the painting by no other means than tying it on top of the manure, the fertilizer with which he had already loaded his cart. That way, on the evening of the 13th of November, like today, in 1875, a dreadful painting made its entrance down the valley on a dung cart. It stinks, but soon it would become the prodigious image of the Virgin of the Holy Rosary of Pompeii, venerated and famous in every corner of the world. This is true because I've seen it venerated even in Latin America, in Colombia and Brazil, in Argentina, etc. What happens is that when this painting is placed for the veneration of the faithful, graces practically rain down. Even Padre Pio, a young friar from Pietrelcina, went to Pompeii to ask the Madonna for graces and received them. And so, as I said at the beginning, ask for graces through the novena and keep doing it until God answers you, because this painting is miraculous. There's a Fabrizio De André song that goes like this: "Nothing comes from diamonds, flowers grow from manure." It seems that this could be applied to the miraculous painting of Our Lady of Pompeii. Naturally, the painting was then subjected to urgent restoration, because as it was, instead of devotion, Blessed Bartolomeo would say that instead of devotion, it inspired terror. So, apparently, it was the Madonna herself who miraculously enhanced her image. Actually, Bartolo recounts that from the day in 1881. But that's enough, because I also need to talk about Messori and Ratzinger. The painting was removed from the little church of the Santissimo Salvatore and placed in one of the side chapels of the new sanctuary. The Virgin's face began to transform, taking on a particular beauty that moved the hearts of all who approached the image to pray. Many could attest to this. It happens to me too when traveling. I don't know if this happens to you. Sometimes I gently point it out to you in prayer meetings, because even the brothers of the sodality, some in particular, are more rationalists than believers. But this is a grace. But it sometimes seems to me, I say it seems, that the face of Our Lady of Fatima that we carry with us, the little statue of Our Lady of Fatima when there's an intense prayer meeting, starts as it is, but then afterwards it's as if it comes to life, becomes beautiful, luminous, joyful at least. That's what's happened to me many times during prayer meetings, and I believe it's not an emotional or sentimental thing, but an objective one. Because Our Lady, as I say, many times when I pray the Rosary, I end up smelling something like roses. So I want to reiterate here, to conclude this long page about the arrival of the painting of Our Lady of Pompeii in Pompeii on the 13th of November, 1875, two final things. The first, a phrase from Paul VI. The Pope, moved as he kissed the face of Mary depicted on the canvas, Pope Paul VI said this: "We cannot forget that distant day when we, as children, and the Pope still used the royal we, with our most devout family, first visited the sanctuary of Pompeii. And we pray before the sacred image that we now have the joy of seeing and venerating before us. Because in the beginning, the Pompeii sanctuary for a while even surpassed Loreto. That is, the faithful also came from the north to Pompeii. And in fact, Montini as a child went to Pompeii with his family. We are therefore all the more delighted to return to your sanctuary the blessed painting restored by the Olivetan monks who recently restored it, with great respect and rare skill." Then the Pope concludes like this: "The Pieta is a popular crown. It appears a chain of salvation hanging from the hands of the Savior and the Holy Father, and it shows where every grace descends to us, and through which every hope must ascend from us." Right, let's close this extensive page dedicated to the painting of Our Lady of Pompeii by adding another detail, or rather two. that today the faithful of Naples and the surrounding area have the grace of being able to kiss and approach to the painting as it lowers. On the 13th of November each year, the painting is lowered from its position in that solemn, sumptuous niche in the central apse. The painting is lowered and the faithful are able to approach it. In the past, you could still kiss. I don't know if that's still possible now, but there's a chance that the faithful and Neapolitans don't need to be outdone by anyone. They put in that Mediterranean pathos, and that's the whole extraordinary story of Pompeii. In these few minutes, we're going to stay true to the title, Ratzinger Messori, a report on faith. I mentioned a passage last night referring it to Father Fare, who despises prophecies, the quote we mentioned last night from Ratzinger in 1984 regarding apparitions. It's a hugely important statement that Father Fare made, saying that faith is the future, Pope says, and I'd like to reread it because I find it incredibly important. No apparition is necessary for faith. Revelation ended with Jesus Christ. He himself is the revelation. However, we certainly can't stop God from speaking to our time through simple people and even by means of extraordinary signs. Careful! Through simple people and also by means of extraordinary signs, miracles. For example, apparently, from that other Pharisaic shore, there's a disdain for all this. Think of Our Lady weeping, shedding tears, shedding blood. Certainly here Ratzinger, in my opinion, as prefect of the faith, is clearly also referring to the painting of Our Lady of Syracuse weeping, shedding human tears. Here, however, we certainly cannot prevent God from speaking to our time through simple people and also by means of extraordinary signs that denounce the inadequacy of our culture, marked by rationalism and positivism. How true is that? But I find this widespread, which is a problem, just as big as that of atheism. I mean, in the church, there are too many people, trained in seminaries, convents, monasteries, etc., who are just like St. Thomas. Look, don't boast. God reveals himself to the simple and small. Of course, you shouldn't be blindly faithful. You shouldn't throw yourselves in headfirst everywhere. I warned you, obviously, because discernment is needed. But where there's clear evidence and certainty that there are fruits of faith, there's no need to be rigidly rationalist or positivist. That's Ratzinger saying that God can freely speak at any time through simple people and even by means of extraordinary signs. The apparitions officially approved by the Church, first Lourdes and then Fatima, have a precise place in the development of the Church's life over the last century. That's what we said last night. Sending it to Father Fare, who despises prophecies and makes us look like fanatical crackpot Madonna worshippers. We're not fanatical Madonna worshippers. We haven't got smashed heads. And that's why, while Father Fare despises prophecies, we embrace them. While he privileges only canon law, a completely inefficient and unproductive unilateralism, in the life of the Church, we in turn have not at all despised canon law because we are full of balance. For us, all theological loci are important. The interview book published by Messori in conversation with Ratzinger in '84 has 13 chapters. Let me read the titles. First chapter, An Unusual Meeting, the background, and then all the decisive arguments, the ones that today are the powders to which fire is given. Second chapter, A Council to Rediscover. The next pope, the one who would become Pope, Ratzinger, as his first topic decided to speak about the council, a council to be rediscovered. Chapter 3, The Idea of the Church. What is the Church? What is the Church? There are many interesting things that Father Fare would have been better off revising before going on social media, pushed by who knows who. Chapter 3, At the Root of the Crisis, The Idea of the Church. Chapter 4, Between Priests and Bishops. Chapter 5, Danger Signals. What dangers threaten the church most? Chapter 6, The Problem of Morality, the Drama of Morality. Chapter 7, which is where I took yesterday evening's quote, which I reiterated today. Women, a woman. It's one of the most interesting chapters, in my opinion, the most prophetic. He talks about prophecies, the apparitions of Fatima, Our Lady, Marian devotion, and also the priesthood for women. Chapter 8, A Spirituality for Today, so the theme of faith. Understood as a spiritual journey, which is another major problem, because the Catholic Church, with the problems it's facing right now, isn't able to offer a spiritual path that satisfies the spiritual needs people have inside. Chapter 9, this is also very important, the liturgy. The liturgical theme is very close to my heart. As you can see, these are all sensitive issues, and therefore the problem of the old rite, the new rite, traditionalism, the Eucharistic theme, etc. Chapter 10, on some final things, so eternal life, paradise, heaven, etc. Chapter 11, Ecumenism, brothers but separated, in the final 2 chapters. Chapter 11, A Certain Liberation, that is the theme of theology, of praxis. Liberation theology. Last week I didn't mention it. Gustavo Gutierrez died. He was considered the father of liberation theology, which, for example, Bergoglio is steeped in. The final chapter, Proclaiming Christ. I'd suggest you all, should it no longer be available, I haven't checked, nor have I asked my colleagues, check if this text is still available. If you can, I'd suggest you take it and keep it with you, because everything we're dealing with these days, it's supposedly out there, all of it, but I don't know if it's the same. Maybe it's just a pamphlet, it's not complete. Anyway, everything we broadcast from the studio, here it is. Report on the headquarters for the types of, I think, San Paolo editions. I don't know if it's all of it, if the book is complete. Let's see how many pages it says. I can't find it. Oh well. Anyway, this is readily available. Right then, in these last few minutes, I'd like to draw inspiration. We'll come back to the other things Pope Benedict, as prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, said in 1984, all issues addressed with a profoundly prophetic vision. And I'd like to move on to the topic of women, seeing as there's so much talk at the moment about the female priesthood. Read. The Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith's document, this is Messori, reiterating the Catholic Church's rejection of female priesthood, bears the signature of Cardinal Ratzinger's predecessor. He did, however, contribute as a consultant. In answer to my question, I'd describe him as very well prepared, although, like all official documents, it displays a certain dryness. It goes straight to the conclusions without being able to justify all the steps leading to them with the necessary detail. Speaking of the women's issue in general, I sense a peculiar regret in Ratzinger. It's women who pay the heaviest price, says Ratzinger, for the consequences of the confusion. How many times have I said this? The superficiality of a culture born from male minds. But where was it written that women's emancipation should constitute a homogenization with the male, of male-dominated ideologies that deceive women? I've always noticed, I don't know if my colleagues from the early days agree, a kind of natural affinity between Don Minutella and John Paul II and Benedict XVI. Those who followed me for years know if this connection is real. I don't need to search or build it. I say things that I consider from a theological point of view, and then, either before or after, I find confirmation in the writings and thought of both Ratzinger and Wojtyla, especially Ratzinger. This, I find a comforting harmony. You wouldn't believe how much. When Ratzinger regretfully speaks of women forced to conform to men, how often I've heard teachings on this, about women who, forced to leave the house, she has to maintain male standards with a serious loss of the woman's and family's identity. Here, the trivialization of sexuality of which women, this too I've spoken about many times, are victims. And then, of course, there's the issue, as I mentioned, of the question relating to the priestly ordination of women, which naturally I can't even quickly read to you, because clearly the catechesis would require more time available at the Santo Cafe window. But Ratzinger did suggest women, that much I want to tell you, as a solution. Mary. It's called a remedy Maria, a remedy Maria. He says that when he was a young theologian before the council, he had some reservations about certain ancient formulas, such as the famous De Maria Nunquam Satis. About Mary, never enough has been said. Ratzinger said, it seemed exaggerated to me. I then found it hard to grasp the true meaning of another famous expression. The expression, that is, which wants the Virgin an enemy of all heresies. Now, says Ratzinger, in 84, the prefect of the faith, in this confused period where every kind of heresy really seems to press, 84, it was still pressing. This confirms my book's claim that the attack began in 60, and Wojtyła and Ratzinger worked with Masons. Right now, he says, the expression Mary, enemy of all heresies, seemed exaggerated to him. However, he says in 1984, now in this confused period where every heresy really seems to be pressing at the doors of authentic faith, I understand that it wasn't an exaggeration by devotees. How lovely this is. But of truths more valid today than ever. Yes, carry on. We need to go back to Mary if we want to go back to Jesus Christ, to the Church, to humanity. Mary must, more than ever, be the pedagogy for proclaiming the gospel to the men of today. In this sense, it seems to me that in the face of all the attacks coming from the left and the right, trying to discredit Don Minutella, as you can see, is leading you on the right and steady paths, my dears. Right? I'll see you at 6:30. As for me, with the recitation of the Third Holy Rosary, after yesterday's 1,337, I don't foresee us replicating those numbers. But that's not so important, nor is this important. What's important is to pray. Then this evening at 9 o'clock, there's the Wednesday Bible study with Brother Celestino. Don't miss this appointment. It's always very nice to hear the voices of the Sodalities confreres, who comment on the gospel